And we'll move now to our next speaker, who is Julian Guess. Julian works with the Sustainability Unit at Yarra Ranges Council.
Okay, maybe I'll get into it and hopefully Jeff will join us. I thought it was me who lost connection then. I'm calling from Warburton, the land of Wurundjeri, and I'd also like to pass my respects to the Indigenous peoples, elders, past, present and emerging. So Jeff asked me to talk about the Council's Livable Climate Plan that got endorsed late in August of this year, and talk about some of our renewable energy initiatives and biochar tonight. Very happy to take questions as we go along, if Jeff is there to moderate, or we can save those questions to the end. I'd also like to mention we are actually in a caretaker period with council elections happening at the moment, so I need to be a wee bit careful about what I say, but I think most of my presentation is in the public domain already, so we should be pretty safe. So just talking about the Livable Climate Plan, there was a lot of community engagement that happened over the course of about over a year actually. We put on multitude of events, 3 main events. We did community screenings of 2040. We asked residents, we'd asked the community, what is their 2040 future? And we had an online survey happening, asking people, what do you really want from council and how do you expect council to support the community? We had that, we had lots of discussions with our councillors, of course, our executive in council in the production of the Livable Climate Plan that was out for community consultation for about 7 weeks during June and July of this year. We had incredible engagement given that everybody was in level 4 lockdown, and we had great interactions in social media, and we actually had around 50,000 social media engagements during that period, which was incredible. If you think about the population of Yarra Ranges, about 150,000 people, so that's around a third of people were engaged in some way with the climate plan. So if we look at our emissions as a municipality, over 2 million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent gets emitted from the municipality as a whole. So this is from the community. The big chunk of that is electricity production at 52%, and transport is also a big measure, around 30%. What council itself produces in terms of emissions is very small, 0.5%, but council considers that we have to get our own house in order first in order to demonstrate leadership within the community. So it's important that council does take a leadership role in reducing our own emissions and also helping the community. So we had some guiding principles about the plan: reducing emissions, preparing for a changing climate, demonstrate responsible climate leadership, and integrate the broader principles of sustainability. That helped guide the production of the plan, and we came up with some targets. So the main ones here is to only have 100% renewable energy by 2030, net zero emissions by 2040, so that includes all the vehicles and so forth, and any gas that we may be using, and zero operational energy spend by 2040. So we've got some good targets. They're very real targets, and we aim to meet those targets. So let's have a look at the plan about what council would do. There were 5 outcome areas: renewable energy, of course, transitioning fleet to zero emissions. So we have around 160 passenger vehicles, for example, and utes. They will be transitioned over the next 10 years. Having sustainable design in our buildings, resilient buildings, and have climate thinking in the forefront of how we conduct business within council. So that's what council would do itself. And how will council work with the community? Well, supporting groups like Healesville CoRE is part of that. So ensuring that we have a thriving Yarra Ranges. Everybody is part of the climate equation, and we're ensuring that no one Yarra Ranges is left behind in the transition to a low carbon future. is the construct and operate some solar farms in Yarra Ranges. And I'll talk about the feasibility study in a few moments. And action 1.2 is establish a biomass carbon capture facility. So that's what we call a biochar plant. And again, I'll talk about that in a few moments as well. And as part of our transition to 100% renewable energy by 2030, we'll look at other opportunities such as the local government power purchase agreement, which power our street lighting. So we're always looking at other opportunities of getting more solar PV and energy storage into council buildings as well. But just a quick update of what we have done over the last few years. So the council operated buildings, about 40 buildings, 4,000 panels, 1.1 megawatts of power is now out there on council buildings. We've started to look at some of the council-owned buildings that are leased to the community and how we can get solar and batteries installed on those. As part of our community programs, we're part of Solar Savers, and I'm very happy to see the figures where Healesville CoRE is supporting the Solar Savers bulk buy of solar panels, and that's currently been expanded to include rental properties, so not just owner-owned properties, but rentals as well. And in the future, we hope to have residential EUAs. So EUAs is environmental upgrade agreements, and that is a way of financing residential solar through a loan that can be paid back through the rates system, which is currently used for commercial buildings. So the next bullet point there is environmental upgrade finance. So we buddied up to the Sustainable Australia Fund. And we've had a few large installations out Healesville way, including Aurum Aged Care and the Four Pillars Gin Distillery. So we help provide funding for those installations. And of course, the solar farms that we're going to talk about in a few moments. So we conducted a feasibility study last year, and Yarra Ranges was formed in the early 1990s by the amalgamation of the shires of Lilydale, Sherbrooke, Healesville and Upper Yarra. And each of those 4 shires had their own landfill sites that have all been now filled in and covered. The last one to be filled in and covered was the one at Coldstream that was part of the shire of Lilydale. So these large patches of land are actually quite costly for us to maintain. And so we are planning to turn these facilities from a cost incurring facility to actually a profit making facility by putting solar panels on top. And I'll just show you the next slide is an aerial photo with the panels superimposed on those aerial photos. So the photo on the left is Westburn. The CAT's landfill is in the top right hand corner there. So that's just behind the Westburn waste transfer station. And you can see Yarra Valley Ecos there, the environment park, so the rear paddock there that's not being used much for anything at the moment can be part of that system. So in total, Westburn is about 1.5 megawatts. On the other hand, Healesville side is a lot bigger, so around 3.9 megawatts of power at the Healesville site, including the thin fire break strip on some Parks Victoria land there as well. Now, if we do build this, and I sincerely hope that we will, the culmination of both the Westburn and Healesville sites will provide twice the power needs for Yarra Ranges Council, and it will also provide an income that will fund climate resilience programs across the Shire. Now, the problem with all this is that it's going to cost us $8.2 million to build or thereabouts, and a 17-year payback period. We're trying our hardest to talk to anyone who would listen to me to try to attract some government funding and possibly how to value add. So instead of just when we export the power back to the grid, instead of getting the wholesale market rates, possibly there might be some other mechanism that we can get more than the market rates for that excess power. So we're still looking into that. If anyone has spare $8.2 million, please talk to me later. So just talking about biochar, if people don't know what biochar is, it's made through a process of turning biomass into a carbon-rich substance through a process called pyrolysis. And biochar is one of the products of the pyrolysis process. It was described in the book Drawdown that came out a few years ago, that was edited by Paul Hawken, and he discussed 100 strategies of how we can actually slow and reverse global warming. And the production of biochar came out as number 72. So fairly long way down the list, but nevertheless, given that we have lots of waste biomass in Yarra Ranges, we thought it worthy to look into. And that's what it looks like. So one of the local suppliers, Green Man Char, produces this lovely black substance that can be used as a soil amendment. Stuck in the soil, it's got good water holding capacity properties, and it can attract nutrients. It can even be inoculated with nutrients as well. That is beneficial for plant growth. So it's a way of getting carbon back into the soil and promoting plant activity. So why is this good for the environment? Well, if you think about the carbon cycle, where carbon dioxide is taken from the air, there's photosynthesis, tree limbs and leaves fall off, and that degrades and gets returned to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. So all in all, it's a carbon neutral sort of process. But what pyrolysis does, it disrupts that process. So the waste biomass from a growing tree, a limb falling, for example, can go through a pyrolysis process, turned into biochar, that carbon-rich substance, and returned to the soil. During the pyrolysis process, there are some emissions, but that can be captured, burnt off, and used for electricity production. And the heat produced from pyrolysis can also help condition the waste wood that goes into a biochar plant. So it's quite exciting that we can actually draw down carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through living plants, and when those plants die, we can disrupt that carbon cycle like that. Again, Green Man Char here, they charge a fair bit for their product, so a litre of biochar is $10, and this wood vinegar, which is another byproduct of the pyrolysis process, so smoke water, that can help stimulate plant growth and germination, $14 for a litre. So fairly high value products that can be produced. Here are a couple of systems. So the one on the top is a prototype system from a group in Newcastle in New South Wales that has designed this continuous biochar plant, and they have their first system up and running at a macadamia farm somewhere in northern New South Wales, where it processes the shells from the macadamias and produces biochar, and that biochar is then returned to the land. The bottom picture is the Earth Systems mobile unit, which is a modified shipping container. And what happens is small tree logs and limbs are loaded into the container. They light a match, shut off the oxygen supply to the carbon to the container, and the whole thing heats up to around 500 degrees centigrade to produce the biochar. And this is Earth Systems' later model, which is a continuous biochar machine, a little bit similar to the machine just now we saw, but this is continuous. It has a conveyor belt, takes feedstock into the machine, an auger pushes it through the reaction chamber, and charcoal comes out the other end. This particular machine was made here in Melbourne, and it was exported to Israel of all places, where it was reassembled and is now running. So for every ton of wood, there's a lot of different things that can happen depending on the machine that's used. So char, wood vinegar, tar oil, and synthesis gas can get produced, and so all different plants are different in the composition of the end products. We're certainly very interested in the biochar that can be produced, so the black lines, and also any energy that can be produced, so heat energy, synthesis gas that can be used to either condition feedstock or create electricity to return to the grid. Rainbow bee eater is another firm that's operating in Western Victoria. It consumes low value biomass residue, so I think it's agricultural or pine waste. It goes into their machine. They're calling the biochar a byproduct, but they're harvesting the synthesis gas that's used to heat up a salad growing enterprise under glasshouse. So possible feedstock, branches and prunings, household green waste, vineyard and orchard prunings, woody weeds. It can be used to help clean up your own properties in terms of bushfire hazard reduction, if you're able to put it in a trailer and take it to where the biochar facilities can be operating from, and any other organic waste that can be used. This is the inside of a typical skip at a well-known construction site in Lilydale. I won't say where. You can see the amount of wood waste that's in that skip. It's probably in the region of around 15%, I estimate. Some bin collectors do separate things that can be recycled or shredded up, but I suspect a lot of wood waste ends up in landfill. In Stockholm a few years ago, there was a prize, a mayoral prize that got won in Stockholm. We received some money to set up a series of biochar plants in the city where residents can take their household green waste, take it to a facility, get stored, taken to a biochar facility, turned into biochar, and that heat energy is used to heat surrounding homes. And that's what it looks like there. So quite a remarkable project, that one, worth looking up on the web if you get a chance. Biochar's been in the news quite a lot, and this article here from The Guardian talks about how it's used in the agriculture in the UK. This one here, straight off the ABC's News Today. You may have seen this. So Logan City outside Brisbane is actually turning human waste through a pyrolysis process and turning it into biochar and creating electrical power at the same time. So quite exciting, that particular project. I'll be talking to those in the coming weeks. And from the BBC, how charcoal can be fed to cows as a supplement. Doesn't sound quite right, but you can actually give cattle biochar. Gets pooped out by them as dung, and the dung beetles come along and take the carbon into the soil. Quite clever, really, but it's a way of certainly reducing the emissions, the methane emissions in the first place, and getting that carbon drawn down in the soil. Again, from WA, an avocado plantation here, and these trials that were treated with biochar were 10% more effective, better water holding capacity, better nutrient uptake, with healthier, more productive plants. So other benefits were obviously sequestrating carbon. We're able to deal with waste streams. It's a local value-add industry. If you look at the waste transfer stations, it costs quite a lot to take your green waste there, but it doesn't cost you much to take a trailer load of mulch away with you at the end. Can be used with pollution control, road construction, and I heard it say the other day there's no such thing as green steel making, but potentially biochar could be used in the manufacture of steel. There's opportunities there to capture the heat and synthesis for energy reduction, for any energy production, either for heating, creating electricity, or further conditioning of the feedstock that comes in. So this project has just kicked off in Yarra Ranges. We've got a grant of $500,000 and councillors putting in another $500,000 into this project. So I'm really excited about it. And we aim is to have a plant up and running by February 2022. We've got a lot ahead of us to get there, but I'm certainly happy to take any questions on this or the solar landfill. And if you want to have a closer look at the Liverpool Climate Plan, it's on the website. Go and have a look, and just navigate to environment and climate change, and down the bottom you'll see the documents for the climate plan and the accompanying action plan as well. So that's about it from me, and we're getting closer to 9 o'clock, so I'll stop and I'm happy to take questions, Jeff.